Adventurous kids, explore with education and learning what a wild life is in the Everglades. I want to explore the Museum of Discovering Science. What plants do butterflies like? I want to know about Key West Adventurous Kids, learning and fun. Adventurous Kids!
Today, I'm going to be telling you about piñatas. So, when you think about piñatas, most of us think birthday parties, right? Everyone remembers being blindfolded and taking a whack at the piñata, getting excited when the candy fell out. And when we ask people where do piñatas come from, most people will say Mexico, and that is true. That's really the heart of where piñatas, particularly the art of it being made, is. But you'd be shocked to learn that it may actually have its origins in China, right? Long time ago, thousands of years ago, the Chinese used to put seeds in a clay pot and bust it open as part of a celebration. An Italian explorer named Marco Polo, and you're going, that sounds familiar. It's a game you play in a pool, but it's also an Italian explorer. So Marco Polo made his way to China, and that's where he saw this celebration where they bust open the clay pots and seeds would fall out. And so he brought that back with him to Italy, and from there it made its way to Spain. And when the Spanish very famously came over and colonized Mesoamerica, the Middle Americas, they brought that tradition with them. Because by then the piñata was still made with a pot and covered in decorations. And on the inside there were treasures, and now it was being used more as a religious ceremony, usually around Christmas. So this is still seen today. You'll notice these piñatas are circular with cones coming off, and it's very, very brightly colored. And there's 7 cones that stand for the 7 deadly sins. And when you bust open the piñata, it's supposed to be freedom from that, and everybody celebrates the reward. When the Spanish were colonizing Mesoamerica, the indigenous people there also had traditions. 2 different people. The Aztecs had a tradition that was a celebration of their god of war. Brightly colored and decorated pot covered with feathers would have goodies on the inside, and they would bust it open, and the goodies that would pour out were spoils for the god of war. The Mayans on the other side of Mexico had more of a game aspect to it, where the person who was busting open the clay pot was actually blindfolded, and the clay pot was suspended off of a string. That's a little bit more like the piñatas we know today. So, when the Spanish came over, and they had their version of the piñata, which actually, piñata has its origins, that word actually means pot, or jug, because original piñatas were made out of clay pots or jugs. So when the Spanish came over, they were colonizing Mesoamerica. One of the best ways to integrate 2 cultures, if you want to do that, is to take something that works kind of on your side and their side and kind of bring it together. So that's what they did, is they took their version of the piñata and the Mayan and the Aztec version and kind of brought it together. And that's where you see today we get the piñatas we know. It's made from something that can break, it's brightly colored, it's got goodies inside, and it's used for celebration. So for many, many years it was used to celebrate the Catholic holiday of Lent. And again, that's what the Spanish used to bring Catholicism to those people that were there, because it was something that they would have in common. Today it's just a very common way that people, particularly Mexican people, use to celebrate. Birthdays, holidays, Cinco de Mayo is another big one. So the tradition still lives on. In most Mexican cities where they have piñata shops and makers, they carry on the tradition of making it with a clay pot. Most places you can ask, like, I want it traditionally made or not. So you can have a traditionally made clay pot, or more commonly today, especially here in the United States, especially if you're talking about handmade versus factory made, but we use paper mache. So paper mache is a process that's super simple. It's flour and water. I thought there was more ingredients. There's not. It's just flour and water. And you mix it in a bowl to create kind of like a paste. You soak newspaper paper, or what we're going to use, which is just drawing paper, because trying to find a newspaper was a whole situation. So it's okay. Drawing paper will work just fine. I tried it. You soak the paper in the paste, and then you apply it to a balloon or whatever it is your paper mache, and you smooth it down. So that when it dries, it creates kind of like this shell. That acts like, and the balloon act like a pot, what the pot does, because it holds the spoils inside. Another way you can make a piñata is out of cardboard and hot glue. But what I learned is that is a lot harder than it sounds and uses a lot of hot glue. So we're going to go over both techniques and talk about both, but what we're going to be doing on camera for you is paper macheing. You can always go the factory made route, right? And you go to a store and you can pick one out that was factory made. Like this cute little guy here. This guy, what do we think? I'm thinking this is a llama, right? And he's got all this, but what you can see here is very common, right? They have the colorful frills, and they're usually in the shape of an animal or a character or something. But again, the most common one, and the one that when you're talking about the traditional people who still make them by hand and still use pots, the most common ones are the Christmas Eve 7 Deadly Sins, the ones you'll note it's a circle with 7 cones, brightly colored cones coming out. That has like the frills like our llama friend here. Now I'm gonna make a piñata. Now for the next part of this episode, we're gonna do paper mache. Now paper mache is messy, so you're going to want to take a couple of precautions. One, just like when we did the hydro dipping episode and the shoe painting episode, you're going to want to lay a tarp down so that you don't make a mess. Parents everywhere will be very grateful. So that's the first thing. The other thing is don't wear anything you're too attached to. Paper mache, like I said, is messy, and while it's flour and water, and for the most part it's not going to stain anything, it's uncomfortable to get on you and it does dry kind of hard. So, the next thing you're going to need for paper mache is the actual paper. Now, the best paper to use for paper mache is newspaper. But we're in such a digital age, I got to tell you, Adventurous Kids, I struggled to track down newspapers. So I found a workaround, which was I found some drawing paper. Just make sure it's not, I would say computer paper would probably be the right consistency. You don't want a paper that's too thick, but you also don't want something as thin as tissue paper because that will break apart in the paper mache. So, the next thing you're going to want is a bowl or a container. So you see here I have a hefty bag because I'm working with what we got. And this is just a concoction of flour and water. So flour, and just water from your faucet. Okay, because when it dries, it's going to dry hard. You'll see, we'll run the paper through it and we'll go through all that. But this one, it already dried hard. So we're going to use this one. It kind of looks, it has paper mache guts here on it, but it's okay because once we decorate it, you're not going to see that. We learned some lessons making that first one. Alright, first and foremost, there are piñata making professionals for a reason. So, the first thing you want to do, before we move on, today we're going to be doing the Mod Podge and Balloon method of making a piñata, because I think that's the easiest and the best, although it is the messiest. I attempted to make a prototype to then make a bigger cardboard piñata. You'll see here this was where the hole was going to be to put the candy, and then I was going to glue in another piece of cardboard. But this was way more difficult. So yes, it can be made from cardboard. It takes a massive glue gun and a lot of patience. So we're going with Mod Podge and a balloon today. So the first thing you want to do is pick your balloon. The color doesn't matter because we're going to Mod Podge over it. We're not going to make a particularly large piñata today, just for the sake of time. I am wearing gloves, probably sooner than I need to be. But gloves are important because, as you're going to see, when we put the paper in the paper mache, it's clumpy. It's flour and water, right? It's going to get schmutz all over your hand, so it's good to have gloves on. So we have our balloon, and this part is where it gets tricky. Because now what we're going to do, I do believe I had strips of paper already cut up. Yes. So, what I did was at the dollar store, or some store, I bought this activity pad paper. And I cut it into strips. And so what we're going to do, keeping the balloon still, is going to be the trickiest part. If I had thought about this more, I would, tape. I should have had tape, but it's okay. I will hold it. This is where you can't be afraid to get messy. So you can see there's this flour in here. I'm just going to mix it up with my hand again, why the glove is necessary. Alright, we're just going to soak that paper in there. I'll hold it up like this. Going to use 2 fingers to wring it out. And I'm going to drape it over the balloon. Ooh, see that? We got some spillage because I got it all over my hand from mixing it up. Kind of want to smooth it out as much as possible. You're going to have creases. That's okay. You'll cover that with the decoration when it comes time. One hand holding the balloon, one hand paper macheing is a... Stay. Stay. Okay. Pause. Ha! Escape my circle. You cannot, balloon. Sometimes you just gotta get creative with what you have. This is, like I said, very messy. I did practice. There is a huge mess in my living room. So you do want to make sure that, one, you don't do it on inside like I did it the first time. You want to make sure you're doing it outside like we're doing it now. Have a way to hold the balloon. This worked much better when it would just stay on my coffee table. This is 2 pieces, but that's okay, because we're going to Mod Podge over. The more, or not Mod Podge, excuse me, paper mache. I keep wanting to say Mod Podge. It's a different gluey substance, but it's also used in art. Like I said, paper mache. Paper mache is super messy, right? It's easy to do. The professionals manage to do it in a very non-messy way. They like have stands, and it's like very like, but they're doing that for a living. I would encourage you, if you're looking into getting a piñata and you have the means to do so, rather than go to a party store and get the cardboard ones that are made in a factory, like find your local, like most areas will have like a little local store that might have authentically made piñatas. And I would say going authentic is always the best route. Also the best way to appreciate and admire a culture. Oh no. And if you're going the bag route, make sure it doesn't leak like that. Make sure you keep standing it up. We're okay, it's on the tarp, that's why we have the tarp, and we will get paper towels later. And it's just flour and water. Super easy to clean up. Oh my goodness. So I think probably my favorite thing that I learned about piñatas was the fact that they were actually, like, could have originated in China. Like, that Marco Polo discovered it and brought it back with him. I think that's pretty cool, because I think, you know, traditionally when we think piñatas, I think Mexicans. I think of it as a Mexican tradition. And I think that that's, you know, that is the case. But I think it's pretty cool to know that it stretches as far as the East. I think that that's probably true of more things than we realize. Okay. So the other thing about paper mache is it does take a day. So once we have the whole balloon covered, we're going to set it to dry. this. This is not ideal for me. I really needed like a table or something. I didn't think this went through. Like I said, at my house, I did this in my living room, made a big mess, but I had my table. Okay, so here's what I'm going to say. Adventurous Kids, for the sake of not making any more of a big mess than I'm making, and you'll be able to see it more on the other one that's finished when we go to decorate, right? So what we would do is finish paper macheing the back here, maybe give it another layer or two, right? Because I think the mistake I made with that one is I did 2 layers. I should have done more than that, right? You let it dry for a day, and then it hardens. It creates a shell. So like, remember, we learned about the traditional way to make a piñatas with a clay pot, right? So the balloon and the paper mache act as the clay pot. They act as the shell on the outside. That makes it easy. So then once it's dry, you can cut open into it, fill it with candy, and then glue it back together. So now you know the messy process of the paper mache, and you keep doing that, layers and layers on top of your balloon. So again, I learned the lesson of layers and layers, because what eventually does happen is your balloon pops. So ideally you get to pick where the hole in the piñata will go. But for us today, we're going to go with the one it provided for us. So that's what we would do to put the candy in. Which, give me 1 second, I forgot to grab the candy. So, we would put in our spooky Reese's skeletons, because it's around Halloween time, into our piñata. We're not going to do that right now because we still have to decorate. So, I like to use regular glue sticks and Elmer's glue. I have tissue paper to go around the outside. Now, something that I like to do when I'm using tissue paper, I'm going to rip off a piece. Let's see if we can do this. Rip off a piece, do like a square, and then I fold it over a pencil, like so. And so we have this glue here. Little less is more. If you struggle with control on liquid glue, go glue stick, because that kind of does the control for you. But if you're brave enough to do the liquid glue, less is more. You can always add more glue. It's hard to take glue away. So I do a little dollop here, and I press, and then I take, oh no, the pencil out. That's left there. So we're going to do a bunch of those. It's going to give kind of like a flower effect. This does take time. This is a very time-consuming process. I need all parties to behave. There we go. Stay upright. Oh my goodness. Sometimes you have to hold it there for a second. Stay. Right, and you would fill up all of these. The other thing that you can do, so I'm going to pick green, give it like a grass, right, is start to, similar to like with the Mod Podge, like it might be kind of fun to do, I'm not going to use the liquid glue for that. I'm going to use the glue stick, right? And I like the purple glue stick because I know where I'd put things. It does dry clear. Right? And you start to kind of lay down your base here. And again, this can be rippy because it gives it, like, as you like put more pieces down, right? The overlap gives it this like mosaic feel. And a mosaic is when you have like typically done with broken tiles. They take pieces of broken tiles and bring them all together to make a beautiful picture, reminiscent of like a Monet painting of like lots of dots that from far away brings the whole picture together, but up close kind of looks kind of kooky. Similar effect, similar effect. So I'm trying to do, again, in the interest of time, a lot of things at once. It will take a long time to decorate your piñata. And that's okay, right? It's an activity that if you're somebody who prefers to do things alone, you can do by yourself. If you like doing things with other people, it's a fun activity to do with your friends. You know what, as I'm thinking about it, what would have maybe even been a little bit easier would have been if I got some spray glue. Spray glue is great. You can get that at any craft store. And you just spray down the area that you are looking to glue. I'm going with, I know we're in October, and this is like giving like springtime, but you know, who doesn't like some nature, some flowers? And again, I know this is purple. It does dry clear. Or so it has been explained, oh my goodness, to me. Okay. Alright, I'm going to get this other piece down. So you can see I have kind of like a grassy area that I'm decorating on this piñata. I'm going to go back to these flowers. Let's see. Let me give it a blue. Let me do some blue here. Give it some color. Oops. Stay. I would say the hardest part so far I've decided about making a piñata, working with piñatas, is getting the piñata to hold still so that you can get it to do what you need it to do. Alright. So again, keep in mind that what you're getting out of me is someone who watched many YouTube videos and learned a lot of interesting facts about the history, but has admittedly not made a piñata since grade school. Oh, nope, that's not big enough. That'll be big enough. Do this on the other side. A little dab. A little doodab. That's the biggest mistake I see kids in particular make with liquid glue, is they just always go a little bit more than what they need. So I would say just gentle on the glue. I don't know if you can get in on that and see kind of where we're going with that, right? Where I would decorate this whole thing. I'm going to try to lay down green. I'm going to do the liquid glue now a little bit. I think that's going to work faster. I'm just worried again about over gluing. Alright, so now we lay down our green pieces. And again, rippy. because it creates this really cool, when you do it enough and you layer it, if I was being really mosaic about it, I'd be cutting these into and ripping these into much smaller pieces. But what is cool about it is the way it gives that like messy look that comes together that I kind of vibe with. Again, in like a Monet painting kind of way. That's covered up there. Alright. Let's see. Get some glue here. I'm going to bring it down here. And I'm even going to bring it on top of here because I'm going to glue on. I'm going to put tissue paper on top of it. So again, it's kind of covering it. I got glue on my hands. That'll happen. Anytime you're crafting, you're going to get messy. Like, that's just a thing that you have to make peace with. Okay. As you can see, let's see. Let me do some pieces here. This is a case of when someone overpromises and underdelivers, because I really had so much faith in myself that I was like, I could make a piñata as good as a store-bought piñata. And the truth is, no. Some people probably can. And it's a fun activity. And I'm having fun doing it. And I think you're getting a very unique, interesting flower garden situation. If these would stay up. I'm finding this technique works a lot better on a flat surface. So, yeah, glue these little bits down. So again, I would follow that around, all the way around the piñata, and I would continue to put more of these kind of all over. This is going to take quite some time to finish. So that's what I'm going to call it here. Again, you always have the option of running down to your local supermarket, pick up one of these bad boys, or if you have the means and the money, please support your local authentic piñata makers. You can usually find them going on the web, doing a quick search is the best way to do that. So, alright, we'll call it here. Thanks for watching this episode of Adventurous Kids.
What did you learn today?
Adventurous Kids.
Adventurous Kids.
What was the most interesting fact?
Adventurous Kids.
Adventurous Kids.
Adventurous Kids.